the first thing I wanted to do was just get the EIDL loan updates out of the way. So a lot of us back in the day, I guess March, April, we first heard about the economic injury disaster loan. We all ran to apply for it. And initially the government said they're going to give us all 10 grand advance, whether we get the loan or not. And it was going to hit our bank accounts in 3 days. Well, we all know how that turned out. We all got basically $1,000 per qualified employee that we had on our payroll. So that didn't quite work out the way they planned it. That fourth point down, the application process, we were anticipating 2 phases. The first phase being pre-approved, and the second phase taking a little longer with a couple of additional steps. Right, financial statements needed to be provided. Some had to be on SBA approved applications. The repayment term still is 30 years. Loan payments are still deferred until the end of 2020. I believe, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but now it's a year from the date you got the loan. Is that correct?
I believe so. There's a question whether or not it's 10 months or 12, but yes,
yep.
It has been extended.
Yep. So now that it has been several months, hopefully some of us have gotten 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, all the way up to 10. We were then wondering, whatever happened with this loan? And within the last few weeks, a lot of business owners have gotten emails from the SBA saying, hey, we actually pre-approved your EIDL loan application. Click here to either create an account or to go to the next step, right? And you had to put in some information. It brought you to a screen, and then it popped up a magic number, what you were pre-approved for. And then you had to, follow a few extra prompts, and then they'd ask you, how much of this money do you want? So for example, if they said you were pre-approved for 50,000, and they then go on to ask you, how much would you like out of that 50,000? You select it, and I'm assuming a lot of you probably selected the max. And then it said, and then you officially applied for the loan. And then the pre-approval either went through to a loan approval or a denial. So for those of you that have gotten the loans approved, you got another email saying the loan was approved. But then it didn't give you any other clarification as to what happens next. Like I said just a couple seconds ago, it was our understanding that there was going to be some additional requests, financial statements, financial data, liabilities, et cetera, that needed to be provided, and that was anticipating taking a couple weeks, maybe months to get through their system as everything else is done since COVID-19 hit. It seems like the system has been pretty slow. So about a week later, a lot of business owners got the loan deposited right into their fund, right into their bank account. One thing we have to go over is how we use this loan. Just like the PPP loan that I'll talk about in a minute, there are stipulations as to how you can spend this loan and the proceeds of the loan, how you can spend it. And there's also other requirements too. Depending on the size of the loan, you may need to have an annual review done by a certified public accountant. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I believe it's 25,000 or more requires a review. Do you know that? 25,000 or more. So that means if you receive more than 25,000 through the EIDL program, you are required to hire a CPA at the end of each year, and you need to have a review of your financials done. That's going to determine, basically that review, the CPA that you hire is going to look at how you spent those funds. And I'm assuming there's going to be more guidance forthcoming to those CPAs that do review these financials due to the EIDL program. It's a 3.75% fixed interest rate. You have 10 months to 12 to pay start paying back the loan. And yet, believe it or not, it's 30 years. So you think about it, it's sort of like a mortgage, a low rate mortgage. It's a fixed rate, maximum term 30 years. So we just want to make sure that we're spending it on qualified business expenses. And what they're calling it a working capital loan. Well, what does that mean? Well, Dan was kind enough to answer a few questions for us, but also out there, working capital in the accounting profession is known as anything that you need to run your business, essentially, from day-to-day operations. That could be rent, business expenses, employees, payroll, not to be confused with using the triple P loan proceeds or even the employee retention credit, because those three are going to overlap, and that's another issue I see forthcoming. Now, all this relief is, a lot of it can be used to help with payroll costs, but some you can't overlap them. So, there's probably going to be a hierarchy that we're going to develop to determine, all right, what do we use first for payroll, what next, and if there's anything left, maybe we can, use the third option.
Yeah, definitely right. I think a lot of businesses who are getting those triple P loans, for instance, they have to use that for at least 60% payroll. And if they're using that for payroll already, why would you use your economic injury disaster loan for payroll as well? So it's great to have an accountant or someone else helping you look for working capital and opportunities to spend down that money.
Yep, that's a good point. And what I'm seeing, there is a tendency for the EIDL loan to come through, and the EIDL loan is what I've experienced with my clients, and even others that have called me to ask for guidance. The EIDL loan proceeds have been generally more than what individual or businesses have gotten through the triple P program, and that applies mainly to small business. There's some heavy hitter businesses out there that have gotten a pretty big penny from the triple P program. So Dan is right. So what we'll get into in a minute, the triple P, we'll talk about the new rules, way more flexible. A lot of you that are business owners that are listening are going to be able to walk away from this webinar if you haven't read about it already, and with big sigh of relief. And be able to sleep better tonight knowing that you have a lot more time to, spend your triple P proceeds and have the loans forgiven if you follow the rules.
Hey guys, real quick, we had a question come through on our site, and I know, Dan, we actually talked briefly about this before as well. Bridget's asking about using the EIDL loan to pay off debts prior to COVID, right? So I know the language, it seems like in the loan itself is a little unclear exactly if you can use it for, it seems like you can't use it for long-term debt or like old debt, but I don't know if you've seen any updates on that, or if you can touch on that a little bit more so it's clear, whether it's anything pre-COVID or just maybe debt that has occurred starting February or March. What do you think about that, or what have you heard recently from that?
So one of the things you have to worry about with an EIDL loan is what you're using it for, and Will is very articulately laid that out. What I've seen in my practice with my law firm, and then I've also advised some other law firms on how they can work through this. SBA has been reacting to COVID differently than it has to other disasters, and that's produced a lot of different rules. EIDL with COVID-19 seems to be slightly different than it is for other disasters, like a hurricane or a severe storm in the Midwest, where you would apply for an EIDL loan. You'd be able to use that loan to cover expenses going forward, but generally you don't use it for expenses previously, especially long-term debt. You want to use an EIDL loan in the COVID context for working capital. SBA representatives have said that this includes your accounts payable, and that could even be in the form of a credit card. It could be in the form of just debt that you're holding on to that you haven't necessarily paid in the form of an invoice. That is something you can use this loan for. But I'd caution everyone to always keep apprised of how this is changing. Because if Triple P has shown us anything, it's that SBA is going to react to COVID. And they're going to try and build nuances in very quickly. And if someone has a question about whether or not they can use the funds from an EIDL loan or even the Triple P loan for a particular debt or a particular expense, call SBA. They have representatives that are educated on this for COVID specifically. And then if they don't give you a clear answer, ask for tier 2. And if you say you want to talk to someone from tier 2, you're talking to a loan officer. You're not talking just to a representative. So they often have greater information. As Will can tell you, and as I can tell you, it's sometimes difficult to get to tier 2 because representatives are supposed to be reluctant to send you up to their management. But I always tell my clients, I always advise businesses who are dealing with triple P and EIDL, stick it out, always ask for tier 2 when you can. And if that's not helpful, always look for SBA SOP 5039. And what that is that's the standard operating procedures for SBA that governs disaster assistance, including economic injury disaster loans. It goes through everything you can use an EIDL loan for in normal context, and we haven't gotten any word from SBA to say that no longer governs.